Somalia, Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia. The Asian kids were mostly Hmong refugees, Cambodians, and Vietnamese. We have a significant population of Middle Easterners, of Muslims as well. So all of us, none of us really discriminated against each other on the basis of race. The different ethnic groups, we didn't really have this clashing of ethnic identities. The one group that there was that though were the Mexicanos, us Mexicans, because we were the majority of the students. So we had factions. We had the Chicanos, the people who had been here 3 or 4 generations who didn't speak any Spanish. We had the children of Mexican immigrants like myself who spoke Spanish at home but spoke English among ourselves. And then we had the recent Mexican immigrants, the people that we call los chuntaros, the chuntis. And there was the rivalries right there between all 3 of those factions. So and then of course even amongst there, since I guess people think I'm a little bit more assimilated than other Mexicans, people would make fun of me. Oh, eres pocho, no eres mexicano, ya eres agringado, you're more Americanized and so forth. But in terms of being discriminated against for being Mexican or suffering any racism for being Mexican, that didn't start until college. I was lucky because I lived in my little ethnic enclave. It wasn't until I went to college, community college, just 15 minutes away from my house, from our house in Anaheim, that's when I realized, wow, people don't like Mexicans, and it came as a huge shock to me. It really did.
Yeah, well, see, I came here when I was 11, and then I started school, and I was the only Mexican kid. There was another one, I guess I would call him Pocho, but from Texas, Anyway, he couldn't speak Spanish very well, but I remember the kids coming back and just kind of pat me in the back and say, "Oh, by the way, your back is red." Yeah, and so I would hit him in the neck and say, "Your neck is red." I'll come back for that one.
Yeah, I have to say I was lucky. I was lucky because that was my experience growing up 1980s, 1990s Anaheim. My mom, she migrated to Anaheim. They migrated up to the United States when she was 9 years old, but she ended up in Anaheim when she was 12. Mid-1960s, Orange County. Mid-1960s, Anaheim. In a junior high of about 3,000 students, there were only 7 Latinos in the entire school. 4 of them came from my mom's village. One was my mom, one was mi tía Angela, so her sister, and then there were 2 other girls from the village. And my aunts and my uncles, they still tear up at the memories of getting this beaten up every single day on account of them being Mexican. And it wasn't even a matter of, wetback or whatever. It wasn't even a matter of skin tone because the people from my mom's village, very, very light skin. My mom, she's whiter than any white person in this room. My grandma had green eyes, and then I think my, great-grandma, it's all a matter of having light skin. And yet, even though they were still discriminated against. And I'm thankful that I didn't have to suffer that. I just got suffered for being a nerd. Therefore, that made me speak as much as I do today.
Here's another question, this is a question regarding Californian politics, and it's Proposition 19, question mark.
Oh, that's a pop proposition.
Yeah, the marijuana legislation that's currently on the books. I don't know what
that has to do with Mexican anything.
Well, that was the question. So if somebody who's the audience wrote this, if they want to elaborate on what they specifically want to ask about Prop 19, here's your chance.
No, I don't think they want to do that. Really briefly, Prop 19, it's a proposition on the ballot that would legalize a certain amount of possession of marijuana. It's one of the real contentious issues right now in California. Although, to put a Mexican angle on it, it's interesting because the proponents of the proposition, they say this is a great way for cities to be able to regulate pot, to regulate the growth and sale of marijuana, and to lessen the power of the Mexican drug cartel. So even with pot, people are using Mexicans as a wedge issue, or to paint the whole thing of the whole issue against marijuana as well. Of course, drug cartels, they're very, very bad, but I think most of there was a report, most of the marijuana cultivation or the marijuana sold in California, it ain't Mexicans who are doing it, let's just say that.
This is going to be tough. In one word or 2, describe Lou Dobbs.
Baboso. Yeah, Lou Dobbs, of course, the vitriolic former CNN host. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, no matter how foolish it may be. Where reporters and activists get incensed is when people start spewing outright lies. Lou Dobbs, I think he nailed his own coffin. Of course, there's a lot of activists who find through a campaign from a website called Presente.org, they pushed and pushed and pushed for Lou Dobbs to get off the air because mostly, at first it was because of his views. I will defend anyone's right to say whatever they want, no matter how foolish it may be. But Dobbs was spewing outright lies, and the downfall of his career was when 60 Minutes did a profile on him, and they trotted out these lies that he said. They told him, okay, Mr. Dobbs, you said that illegal immigration has brought in 3,000 cases of leprosy in the past 7 years. I'm paraphrasing here. 3,000 cases of leprosy in the past 7 years to the United States. But the Center for Disease Control, which tracks all the disease in this country, they can only find 300 cases of leprosy in the United States in the past 30 years. How do you justify that? And he said, well, if we reported it, that's truth. That's absolute true. Well, that was an outright lie. So I'm so glad that Dobbs just went by, went down.
And to add to that, we have one politician here in Broken Arrow that said that, and he actually wants to introduce a similar bill like Arizona 1070.
He said the thing about leprosy? Oh, interesting. You see, and this is why I would advise all of you, of course it doesn't have to be just about Mexican issues, but always, when your politicians are spewing off stats, you have to check them out. Maybe some of your politicians here, you might have heard this one, that illegal immigrants kill 24 people a day, or that more illegal immigrants have killed Americans than American lives have been lost in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. That was uttered by, who's a crazy guy from Iowa? Steve King, is it? Peter King. I think it's Peter King. Steve? Okay, Steve King, yeah. He wrote this in a congressional report, and so therefore the media, they say, well, if Congress says it, it must be true, right? Well, it's absolutely not true. The Southern Poverty Law Center, they went and they showed that he got his stats, and actually the same leprosy stat, it came from a woman who passed away. Her name's Dr. Madeline Kosman. Well, problem is she's not a doctor. She got her doctorate from a diploma mill, and her in this same report she said that what was it? That Mexican priests. This is like a direct quote. That Mexican priests like to cross into the United States and they like to molest boys and girls. Like this is what passes as academic knowledge that's being used by some of the politicians out there. So you always have to be skeptical about what people say about anything, but in this case about anything associated with any pathologies when it comes to Mexicans, and especially Mexican immigration.
In reference to Lou Dobbs, you might have also heard that about a week or so ago, it was also revealed that there are a number of undocumented workers that worked on his ranch. So, and he was profiting, and you could say, building his career on the backs of illegals, and yet he had employed, supposedly unknowingly, undocumented workers.
That was funny, wasn't it? Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Yeah, so Lou Dobbs, his daughter rides horses, show horses for a living, and so the Nation magazine did this expose that Dobbs, he'll always say unknowingly, but that Dobbs hired illegal immigrants to work on his farm. So the very man who's railing against illegal aliens destroying our country was getting cheap labor off of them. What a country.
Testosterona alguna vez? Have you ever checked your testosterone level lately?
No.
And the second part of that question is, ¿por qué esa manera tan provocativa de escribir? Why do you have such a provocative way to write and to answer?
Well, thank you for thinking I write provocatively. The column, well, here's actually something that, okay, here's something that probably most of you actually don't know about me. I'm actually, Ask a Mexican is just one facet of my life as a reporter. In my day-to-day job, well, now I'm managing editor for the OC Weekly, so now my responsibilities have changed a little bit. But traditionally, I was just, an investigative reporter. As an investigative reporter, I did a lot of stories, just, on crime, on history, on immigration, of course. So I've done these quote-unquote serious news stories on immigration. I've told the story of my parents. I've done interviews with people from the anti-immigrant movement, give the other side their say, no matter how foolish it may be. I've done opinion pieces. I used to be a contributing editor to the Los Angeles Times opinion pages, so I would write more sober, more serious pieces for the LA Times about Mexican immigration. And when I write about immigration, it's always, again, to debunk stereotypes, to fight racism. What I've discovered, though, with this column, with Ask a Mexican, is that that is, by far, my most effective tool to fight racism and bigotry. Because the column, the reason it's so provocative, it's meant to be provocative because it's written in the form of satire, sátira. Or sátira, soy pocho, so my apologies. If you know anything about satire, it's a form of comedy where you try to be as outrageous and as ridiculous as possible, but only to make a very specific political point about an issue. It's a form of comedy, but it's not always trying to be all jokes and banter and laughter. You think of the great satirists in the past, people like Jonathan Swift and Mark Twain, and the present day Stephen Colbert, Dave Chappelle. We all think they're funny. We all think they're funny men, but we don't consider them comedians. We consider them actually to be very pointed in their critiques. When Jonathan Swift in A Modest Proposal was talking about eating Irish babies, in a way he was joking around, but in another way he was being deadly serious. So similarly with my column, I do try to antagonize. I do try to provoke. I'm more than happy to play the fool, but only because satire is this beautiful form of comedy where it creates a space that you, on one hand, you hammer away by being a fool, but on the other hand, you're making a point that you're driving when people are not paying attention. I really view the column as a Trojan horse in some ways, where I'm saying people, look at me, look at this big horse, look, I'm being a fool, look, my little Ask a Mexican guy and a whole bunch of Spanish curse words. That's what people are paying attention to, and that's what they're reacting to. But while they're reading, at the same time, I'm sneaking in answers, I'm sneaking in facts, I'm sneaking in responses. And of course, intelligent minds can disagree on the method. Some people agree with it, some people don't agree with it. Satire is a very hard thing to do, and I'm not going to say that I pull it off all the time. But the one thing I do know is that the one group of people that are unanimous in not liking the column are bigots and racists. They see right through the satire, and they see exactly what the column is, which is one big, giant, I can't say this word, but you guys know, like, and you know the word in Spanish, to the know-nothings, to those bigots. They see right through it. I mean, I've gotten death threats because of the column. I get nasty stuff. One time, somebody actually sent me a big bag of poop to my office. And it's all from the racists, and I love it. I love it. That means I am being effective. So because I'm so effective in antagonizing them, that's why I continue to do the column. I still do the quote-unquote serious reporting because that has its time and place as well. I absolutely agree with that. But why would I not use this arsenal in my tool belt to be able to fight bigots? And then the other thing I forgot to say, one of my main beats in Orange County is also the hate group beat, because Orange County, we might not be the Mexican hating capital of the United States anymore, but we're still the skinhead capital of America, as deemed by the Anti-Defamation League. So, and one thing I do know, people don't mind being yelled at, people don't mind being, exposed. What people do not like is being ridiculed. And the column, all it does is ridicule people who actually think Mexican immigration is somehow different from any form of any other previous form of immigration in American history.
On the bag of goodies you received, they didn't catch it at the reception? They didn't smell it?
No, they did not smell it.
It was the bag.
The bag was vacuum sealed. But you know what? It went to good use. We put it into our compost bin, and now it's growing some chile somewhere. It's beautiful.
All right, the next question from the audience. Why do so many Mexicans vote Republican when it's Republicans who want them out of the country?
Why is it that so many Mexicans vote Republicans? Which Mexicans vote Republican? Not in California. Here's the funny thing. The funny thing is that I would argue, in fact, I get into this argument with a lot of my Republican or conservative friends. I do think that Mexicans are, in some ways, true conservatives. They don't want the government in their life. They're family oriented. A lot of us are religious. A lot of us, there's other, what other things about, sort of conservative values, and no less a Republican than George W. Bush said that. Mexicans, immigrants are bringing family values coming up, through the border, and so in some ways Mexicans would make natural Republicans. The problem with the Republican Party, at least out in California, is that they shot themselves in the. They keep shooting themselves in the feet again and again and again. When they start railing against illegal immigration and Mexicans and this. And this is the example that I use for my friends. I tell them, look, my cousins, they are rock-ribbed conservatives, for better or for worse. They're racist. They don't believe in gay marriage. They have all the talking points that the National Republican Party has for themselves. And these are my cousins. Dozens of my cousins, blue-collar workers, hate the government, did not vote for Obama, or didn't want to vote for Obama, let's put it that way. But the minute they hear Republicans railing against Mexicans, they say, you know what, Republicans, screw you, because when you're railing against illegal aliens, quote-unquote legal aliens, you're talking about mi tío, you're talking about my dad, you're talking about me. And how dare you criticize my family? Just to spite you, I'm going to vote Democrat, or I'm not going to vote Republican for you at all. There is no hope for the Republican Party in California. There is no hope whatsoever. There's no hope whatsoever. And that would be my warning to Republicans across the United States. When you start railing against an ethnic group, well, that ethnic group, eventually they're going to get their turn they're going to get their turn in power. We learned our lessons. We're not going to discriminate against those people who discriminated against us, but we're as sure as hell not going to be supporting any of your policies. Absolutely. Be warned.
A question from the audience. The CDC recently reported that Hispanics tend to live nearly 8 years longer than non-Hispanic whites and blacks. Could you share your thoughts on why you think this occurs?
Somebody put it on my Facebook page. By the way, if you're not my fan on Facebook already, please be my fan on Facebook, won't you? Just type in Ask a Mexican. You can't be my friend anymore because I have 5,000 friends already and they don't allow you. Why do Mexicans live longer than non-Mexicans? My grandma just passed away at age 96 years old, and until the last year of her life, she was still walking without a cane every single day. I think it's just dietary patterns in some way, or not only so much dietary patterns and emphasis on taking care of yourself, but I do believe in the power of being surrounded by family to prolong your life. My grandma, I have to say, if my aunts had shoved her into a retirement home, she probably would have died much, much younger, but instead she lived, from daughter to daughter to daughter. We all love to have her around us, and when you do have that close nuclear and extended family, I do think that's going to extend your life a little bit. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but that's what I've seen in terms of our elderly having much more, I would say, happier lives than say other elder folks. That's what I think of.
By the way, if anybody has a question, just raise your hand, okay?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy, yeah.
This is your opportunity. This is your show, not his.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. In your opinion, how did the issue of immigration become a hate issue?
How did the issue of immigration become a hate issue?